started. So thank you to everyone who is attending this info session, which is calling session 0 of what will be a 6-part plus 0 workshop series, proposal development program. I should have put her name in here. So this is something that I've been working on with Julie Martin, who is a career awardee and from 2009, who has been a career program officer. We constructed this together over the course of several months. Unfortunately, she's on medical leave into this semester, so I'm going to be flying solo for the first part of this. But this info session is something that we've done every year, and the purpose is to help you, give you information about the career program, and to help you give you the information you need to decide whether you're ready to apply, at what point you might be ready to apply, and what you need to do in order to have a competitive proposal. This is a standalone thing. Everyone is invited to this. The program itself will be, there's an application process. We don't exclude anybody as long as you're eligible for the program, but we're going to ask you to register to be part of it. Yes. Okay. So with me is Rachel Ankierski. She might be the second picture on your screen. And let's get started. Here's the agenda. I'm going to give you a few career facts. They are out of date because NSF got excited about releasing a bunch of career statistics in 2022, and then they haven't done it since then. And I haven't been able to find good information on that, but it still gives you the larger points will be valid even now. Then we'll talk about NSF career program goals and proposal structure. A longer version of this has a focus on the education plan, and I left those slides in there hidden, but when we share this slideshow, you'll be able to look at those. We're just not going to have time to cover that in detail now, and it's going to be the focus of at least one of the other sessions that are part of the program. For career proposal development program pitch, I'm going to try to convince you to join the career proposal development program. There are both reasonable and unreasonable inducements. And then we'll have a Q&A. If you have questions in the meantime, feel free to type them in the chat, and Rachel's going to decide whether it's more appropriate to interrupt me so I can answer them because they're immediately relevant to a slide, or whether it's something I'm going to touch on later, in which case we can revisit at the end. A few career facts. So as of 2022, these were the success rates for traditional investigator-initiated projects, in other words, all other kinds of NSF grants, versus career projects. So the success rates for traditional projects are higher in most directorates, which is not surprising, because, of course, those tend to be more experienced investigators. That includes everyone senior faculty who are well-versed in applying to NSF. But in fact, given that, the success rates for career proposals are not actually that much lower. So that is an optimistic fact. Again, for 2022, you can see how this could also be titled, "How well funded is your directorate?" And some of these numbers are probably the low numbers are probably even lower because of the shift toward very much the hard science, STEM, engineering that has happened in NSF over the past few years. But the takeaway here is that there are lots of ways to get your feet wet with NSF. Career doesn't have to be the starting point. And then the third little bar graph is the percent of PIs who are funded without prior support versus percent who have existing prior support. So again, this doesn't have to be your entree into NSF. And in fact, one of the most important decision-making criteria you have to consider is how much do you like teaching? Because an NSF career proposal is really meant to be almost equally divided in terms of your career between research and teaching. So if you find yourself trying to think of an education plan and just feel like that is not the thing for you, then there are lots of other ways to start getting NSF funding. You do not have to apply for a career. Many people never do and go on to have great, successful careers. For those who are gung-ho about teaching, it's kind of a unique mechanism where you get to be creative about teaching, get funding for sort of unique education ideas, and it can be a really nice springboard for the education component of your career. All right, we're already on number 2, career program overview.
Okay, sorry. Should I launch the poll? And did you want to introduce the poll?
Oh, yes. Launch the poll.
Okay.
So our question about this on the registration form for this session got messed up. And so I wanted to ask 2 questions. One, do you plan to apply for a career proposal? The other one, the question that got messed up is how many times have you submitted a career proposal? Apparently, the lowest number you could give was 1. So everyone who had never submitted or had submitted once, I'll put 1. So that was not helpful. So I'm gathering this information now. We're at 30 of 41 people, and I know that there are some AI note takers who probably do not need to fill out the poll. Looks like it's almost all new applicants, which is great. It's great to have resubmitters too. Your experience will be extremely valuable. All right, we're gonna assume about 35 is good. So, do you plan to submit a career proposal? We have 46% of people say yes, 16 people said yes, 7 said no, and 12 maybes. Those are the people really who this is pitched towards. Nobody wandered in by accident, so that's good. Means I think the era of Zoom bombing is mostly over. That was kind of a COVID thing. How many times have you submitted a career proposal? So only 3 have submitted once, nobody submitted twice. And of course, 3+ is a trick question because you are only allowed, oh wait, no, you could, yes, you would be done. You'd be done applying and this would no longer be relevant unless you were just a big fan of career, I guess. So thank you for filling that out. And, oh, I was supposed to click share results. Here are the results. I'm not a big poll person. This was, a stopgap because that question didn't work. So there we go. All right. Moving on. How do I get rid of this? All right. Okay, so career program is fairly unique within NSF. Other agencies actually have, a lot of them have similar programs, many of which are modeled after NSF's career program. But the key points are that the proposal is about investigator development. The PI is the product, both the product of the proposal and the producer of the research and education plan. So it is meant to instigate a lifetime of leadership in integrating education and research. And integrating education and research is the name of the game. We'll talk about that a lot, but depending on your field, that can be more or less difficult, but we have strategies to help you figure out how to do that. And career funding is a foundation for future efforts. It's not really meant to be a 5-year standalone research project. So even more so than we always want in a proposal to talk about what our long-term goals are so that the agency can get an understanding of how this fits into your research agenda and how it might impact your field. But career is even more so. So really focusing on your long-term goals so that the reviewers can understand how your specific research is going to grow and develop over the course of your career. Should you apply? Okay, so as mentioned, 3 chances to submit. So timing is a consideration. Typically, most people do not apply in the first year of because they're designing courses and moving to a new city and doing a bazillion things. But if you're ready to apply first year, that's great. It'll give you, lots of time to develop. You don't want to wait too long because it really is the chances of getting funded keep going up as long as you are in good faith revising and improving your proposals each time. your chances keep going up with each submission. And NSF is even strategic about that. If a first-time proposal and a third proposal are equally meritorious, they tend to award the third one because that's your last chance. So you have to think about this as a process, and expect to revise and submit twice. If you don't have to do that, that's great. Some people do get it on the first time. Many people get it on the second. If you're applying in your third year, that's really the latest you want to apply for the first time, because that'll give you 3 chances. Any later than that, you're kind of risking getting tenure and no longer being eligible. You must be tenure track, but you can't have tenure or be an associate professor. That is the law according to the rules. Preliminary data and publication record are important considerations. You kind of have to benchmark that against prior career award winners and colleagues. If you don't have enough preliminary data, if your publication record is not yet fully sort of developed, then those are the things to focus on rather than applying right off the bat. It is good to have existing or developing outreach and education experiences and connections to sort of have the lay of the land and get an idea of, especially if you're doing sort of non-undergraduate, graduate education, if you're doing K-12 or any sort of, citizen science or outreach type activities as part of your education plan. Building those relationships can be important. And then factor in your time, energy, and priorities. Again, it's going to depend on what else is going on in your life, your life and your academic life. So there's really no harm in waiting as long as you consider the timing factor that was mentioned before. So apply at the right time for you and your career. Steps to success. So and it says go, because at some point you make a no-go decision. Am I going to apply this year or not? This is where you're still thinking about it, perhaps. So starting early, you're already doing that. It's February. There are plenty of people at other institutions who aren't even thinking about this yet. So good job there. Talking to a program officer in one of our sessions, we'll talk about how to do that. Attending career webinars, virtual office hours, and gathering whatever other information you can about the career program, and reviewing funded proposals. So we have a library of proposals that folks have generously allowed us to share with other participants in this program going forward. So we'll have plenty of models for you, regardless of your discipline, that you can look at and see how people have structured them and approached the challenge of developing one of these. And then close read the solicitation, which is still unchanged. It was published in 2022 and it hasn't been updated. There is a chance that it will get updated, in which case we will pivot to the new solicitation. But taking a look at the old one and seeing what's involved is obviously a very important step to deciding whether to go forward. So this is go with an exclamation point. So once you've decided to, all of these are parts of the program that we are implementing here. But once you've decided to go forward, identifying colleagues at various levels of experience who are willing to review your proposal. You want to develop a research plan that's founded on preliminary data. So there's the importance of that. Develop feasible but impactful outreach activities, integrating research and education. The gold standard for a career proposal is having a research plan that informs your education plan. In other words, the education piece of it grapples directly with your research. And that's easier to do in some fields than others, as I mentioned before. But and then having an education plan that informs your research. Like if whatever the nature of your research is such that your undergraduate or graduate students can be directly involved in the research, and that their findings can then impact, as part of the education plan, can then impact your research. That's really what you're going for. Making sure that all activities are specific and measurable, and that's where a lot of proposals fall down. A comment you see often is how are you going to measure success of this education plan? And we have some resources for that. and budget appropriately. And one of the things you do in that initial conversation with the program officer is to discuss what a typical budget for that directorate is and any specific budgetary oddities that you might have. Maybe you need a big piece of equipment, or God help you, ship time or something like that. That's something to talk to the PO about, because budgets for these budget expectations vary according to directorate fairly significantly. I've seen ones as high as 1.3 million in the life sciences that have just a ton of required materials and supplies or animal resources. And there can be as low as like 300,000 in something that is much less resource intensive. So talk to the PO about that in that initial conversation. The review criteria for peer, this is outdated for a peer review and an NSF review. The review criteria are based on intellectual merit and broader impacts. Advancing knowledge is one of the metrics. To what extent does it advance knowledge in your field? And to broader impacts, to what extent does the proposal have the potential to benefit society? Are there innovative and transformative elements? Since you are competing against hundreds, if not thousands, of other assistant professors across the country, you need to emphasize those. Incremental progress is of course fine in science, but it's going to be a disadvantage in an NSF proposal. There needs to be something exciting and potentially that will drive your field forward. Proposals must be rational. There needs to be a clear rationale. Why am I doing these things in order to answer these questions? What is the logic behind that? And feasible. You need to have the resources. It has to be right-sized for the budget that's available. It is difficult when you're first doing these to figure out how much you can actually do in 5 years. 5 years seems like a long time, and a few $100,000 seems like a lot of money, but neither of those things go as long as they seem like they will. And then PI qualifications and environment are the last review criterion. We have great environment here at UGA and great resources. So being able to emphasize your qualifications in the personnel documents and in the proposal itself is key. Intellectual merit explains why researchers in your field should care. And that is the potential to advance knowledge and drive your field forward, possibly even if you are working interdisciplinarily to create new fields of knowledge. That would be awesome. Difficult to do, but broader impacts are why everyone else should care. So, of course, NSF has revised their broader impacts page to remove certain things. These are some of them. I strongly recommend going to this page. It's a great way to think through what the broader impacts of your proposal might be. But increased economic competitiveness, partnerships between the academe and industry, public scientific literacy, and national security are all desired outcomes. Globally competitive workforce in STEM, or as the new administration would say, globally dominant workforce in STEM. That's the word they like to use associated with grants now. Improved K-12 education and teacher development, undergraduate education, and then a general improving the this is what they've replaced the DEI language with, is improving the well-being of individuals in society, which could not possibly be a broader criterion. So this slide is intended to illustrate a kind of parallelism between the research plan and the education plan that is fairly unique to a career proposal, although I think it's an interesting way to think about other proposals as well that have an education element. So your research, of course, you have research questions or hypotheses, objectives, activities that will help you to prove or disprove your hypotheses or answer your research questions, and then expected outcomes, just as you have education goals, you have objectives for how to achieve those, activities that will allow you to achieve them, and then expected outcomes. So career proposals are not necessarily divided in half. I've never seen a 7.5-page education plan, but you might try to allot at least maybe 4 to 5 pages. Usually it's 3 to 5. 5 is long, but 3 to 5 pages. You don't want to give short shrift to the education plan is one of the takeaways from this. This is just the basic project description structure. So start with the introduction and background. We'll talk a lot more if you're in the program about how where to put the emphasis and what the strategies are, what the pitfalls are for each of these sections, presenting the project goals and objectives. An important part is the career goals and strengths of the PI. And there's a pretty wide range of focus on your or sort of personal background that you can give in a career proposal. Obviously, it should all be relevant, but some people give a lot of information about their background and tell us kind of a story of how they came to this point of being a faculty member who's ready to submit a career proposal. Other people, present that information, but really move more quickly to their science and their research. Explaining the significance of the project. Of course, you need preliminary data, the research plan, standard components. The education plan is highlighted in green because that's unique. A unique section. It's headed education plan. It has to be in there, and it has to be rigorous. A dissemination plan. A project timeline is not required, but is often very helpful. And that's also one of the places, hopefully, where you can demonstrate that your research plan and education plan are in concert with each other. So you can show those timelines and how maybe those plans feed into each other over the course of the project, through the milestones that you're hoping to accomplish. And then the two required components are results from prior NSF support, which you always have to put in there and say none if you don't have any. We've had proposals rejected for not saying anything about prior support, even though they didn't have prior support. And then broader impacts. Okay, so that is a lightning fast overview of the career program. Now I'm going to pitch you on our career proposal development program. So this is, why should you participate? Here we go. This is designed to be a cohort experience. We hope that if you sign up, you will be able to come to almost all of the sessions. Of course, we realize that you have other obligations, and who knows, you might have a course that is at the exact same time. We will record all of the sessions that are on Zoom, and those recordings will be made available to participants, but obviously it's better, especially for the more interactive workshops, to be participating in person. But it combines expert and peer support is what we were going for. We had done a peer review program for many years, and it was good in the sense that with our limited resources, we were able to offer, some review of people's proposals, but it would depend, pretty greatly on who is in your peer group, how assiduous they were about reading and providing feedback on your proposals. So this year, for the first time, we are recruiting past career award winners to serve as reviewers for proposers this year. So that's the session 5. We'll get to that in a sec. Other reasons, so you're going to be on what seems like a long timeline. We are 5 months and 10 days away from the NSF deadline. This is actually in the research development, proposal development field, which is Rachel's and my field. This is actually considered to be a pretty reasonable timeline for proposal development, especially given that you're assistant professors, and I know that there are a lot of demands on your time. So working steadily at it rather than trying to carve out 3 solid weeks to bang it out is a much better road to success in our professional experience. Learn to think like a reviewer. So there is still a peer review component to this. So you will be, working with and talking with the rest of your cohort. So that is a benefit as well. And then access to proposal writing resources, as I mentioned before, a library of successful proposals. And then there will be refreshments at all the in-person sessions. And this morning, I decided that we should have happy hours. So after each session, we will, those of us who want to, will decamp to a secret location, which I will divulge only when we have the final cohort established. optionally, and talk about whatever, career research, whatever. So that's why you should participate. So we're going to go through each of the sessions and what we're sort of hoping to accomplish. So the first session 1 is next Friday, and I don't have let me mention, I'll mention this a few times, but we do need people to register for this affirmatively. So there's a survey link at the end of this, and there's one. Rachel, I don't know if that went out to people yet, but we can send it out if it hasn't. We're asking that you decide by next Wednesday whether you want to participate or not. For the yeses, I'm assuming you'll all want to participate because this sounds so great. The maybes, if you decide to go forward, that's great too. And then, so this, generally, these are going to be in Adderhold has a fancy media conference room that seats like 60, 70 people and has people who like help you with technical stuff. So I always try to take advantage of them, especially since we always have some education proposals. And we've actually had a fair number of education career proposals funded in the past. There will be a Zoom option for most of them. Because obviously people need that flexibility, even if it's just because it butts up against something else. But we encourage you to come in person whenever possible. It'll be sad if the room is mostly empty and nobody's eating the delicious refreshments that we bring. So that first one is actually, so this is Julie's presentation that I'll be giving. I'll be doing my best Julie impersonation. As I mentioned, she's the director of ED, the Engineering Education Transformations Institute. She was an NSF program director and a career awardee. So there are lots of good insights in this presentation, and I've seen her give it a couple times. So I'll do my best to transmit that. And then when she's able to join us, she can fill in any gaps that I leave. But the purpose of that is to situate the career program as a career development that lays the foundation for your long-term vision. It talks about the unique qualifications and integration of education components, and then we provide some tips for writing your one-page summary. And the homework after that session is to develop your one-page project summary. Session 2 is the project summary peer review and strategic timeline development. And those are kind of smashed together into one session because they both have to happen here. There's a big gap between these two. That is a result of spring break being in the way and people's schedules being difficult to manage. So we decided to do it after spring break rather than the Friday before spring break. That is, I don't know if there will be a Zoom component to this. I have to think about how that would work logistically. But this is the really intensive peer review part of this. So it is very important to be able to review your peers' writing in a useful way and to learn how to take in critiques of your own writing usefully. And so our guest is going to be Becky Martini, who is Associate Professor of English and the Writing Center Director. And she's going to give a presentation on how to critique, essentially, and how to respond to critiques. And then we will break into writing groups, and you will read and critique, give constructive critiques of each other's project summaries, which also affords you the opportunity to see what other people are doing and how people are approaching the task of writing a project summary. Then the third part of this is the presentation of a timeline and checklist and how to use it over the course of the next, it'll be the next 4 months from March 16th. And then we'll also talk briefly about how to contact and talk to an NSF program officer, what questions to ask, what the best ways to do, what do you do it, what do you do if they're completely non-responsive, that kind of stuff, which is rare, but not quite as rare as you'd hope. And then the homework for that is to discuss your one-page summary with a cognizant NSF program officer. We'll meet again on Friday, March 27th. And this is the session that's focused on the education plan and broader impacts. This is going to be a panel discussion and Q&A with 3 esteemed participants. James Huff is a professor in the ED and a career awardee. Paula Lemons is a professor of biochemistry and molecular biology and the senior, I think that says senior, associate dean for academic innovation. She's a career award and a PCASE award winner. and a science educator extraordinaire. And then from our friends in public service and outreach, Brandy Walker is a senior public service associate in the J.W. Fanning Institute for Leadership Development, and can give us a lot of information about the PSO units that you might be able to leverage in developing an education and outreach plan, especially for sort of the non-academic audiences. Then this homework is not going to be collected, but the idea is then you can draft your education and broader impact sections. So we're breaking this into digestible chunks is the goal. On April 17th, we will have a session on writing, essentially. So how to pitch your future career to NSF. I originally called it how to sell your future to NSF, but that seemed a little bit dystopian. So I edited myself. This is going to be an interactive presentation with writing exercises I'm envisioning. And it'll be me and John Bricado, who's a technical communications senior lecturer in the School of Chemical Materials and Biomedical Engineering. And then we move to the point where you are just working on your draft. So after this session, you'll be writing a draft. I'm calling it an 80% draft. That does not mean that it is 80% text and 20% white space. It means that it's 80% of the way that where it needs to be in order to be a competitive proposal. So you have a complete draft, but it is, there are parts that are weaker than others that need strengthening. There may be, details that you haven't ironed out yet, that sort of thing. On June 8th, the session 5 begins. These become a little bit more diffuse. The word session doesn't really apply, but we're stuck with it, is the expert review and feedback. So this is where you turn your 80% draft in on June 8th to your assigned reviewer, and we are going to match reviewers to some extent. We'll be able to match reviewers' expertise to participants' expertise, but this is not meant to take the place of somebody in your department, like a senior faculty member in your department reading your proposal. That's something that you need to arrange that's outside of this, but it is somebody who should be able to provide substantive feedback on all the aspects of your proposal. And these will be past career awardees who have not only successfully won a career award, but have been through, in some cases, only a couple of years, but in some cases, all 5 years of what it's like to actually manage a career award. And so they will have a lot of insights about especially when I was talking about right-sizing the project for the budget and time and figuring out how much you can actually do, not over-committing or under-committing. They'll have a lot of insights about that based on their experience. So I think this should be a very productive thing. So they are expected to review your proposal, provide written feedback, and then in most cases, unless you don't want to have a 30-minute consultation to talk about, it could be longer, they'll decide how generous they want to be with their time, but a 30-minute conversation about, how can I improve this? Here are some ideas, that sort of thing. At that point, so we're focused on really the project summary. We'll touch on ancillary documents, in other words, facilities, mentoring plan, data management and sharing plan, all of that kind of stuff. Those are outside the scope of what we're working on within this peer review project or within this program. But this is the point where you've turned in this draft. You can stop thinking about it for a while and work on all of the ancillary documents. So budget justification, your bio sketch, and so on and so forth, and get those together. And you would do that working with your grants coordinator or your DLSA or SPA. And so a lot of you, I'm sure, have a grants office within if you're in Franklin, of course, it's REST. Most of the colleges have one. There are some that don't, in which case the person to contact would be your SPA, your Sponsor Projects Administration representative, and we can help you figure out how to do that if you don't know. Session 6. So this is where we really come in. So we will OSRD, so me, Rachel, and a staff member who is to be hired in soon, will provide feedback and editing of your final drafts. And we have a lot of experience with career proposals and other proposals. We are not experts in your field, so we'll be looking at structure, and especially the education plan and broader impacts. We'll be looking at, did you convey the significance of your research? Is the rationale for why you're doing what you're doing clear? Is the logic clear? And then, of course, we will do, line edits for clarity and grammar and spelling and all that. And those are due to us July 6th. Might need to change that a little bit now that I think about it. It's 2 weeks before the deadline. That's they're due TBD. It might need to be the week before that. I may be a little over ambitious here. Yeah, I think we'll change that to June, whatever that is, 29th. And if we have, I think the most career proposals we've ever submitted as an institution is 33. It's either 33 or 38. I keep forgetting what that number is. If we get that many, we will recruit other people to serve as reviewers too. We've done it before. I've done it again. Nate, my boss, Nate Niblink, is on this call. We'll make him review some. We have people who have expertise for whom it's not exactly part of there will be other duties as assigned for them. And then, so once that expert review feedback is incorporated, we provide, I already said all of this, and we're happy to also meet with you to talk through the proposal or any sticking points. Then the homework is to finalize and submit your career proposal through your SPA representative or your person in your unit who is authorized to submit proposals on behalf of the university. Those people are called people with designated limited signature authority, or DLSAs. If you didn't know that, now you do. All right, so here's a summary of the timeline. We're here in session 0 today, Friday the 13th. We want you to register by next Wednesday, the 18th. The first session will be a week from today. Then we already talked about these sessions. Complete draft by June 8th, final draft by June 29th. We'll see. I mean, this might be a little bendy. Let me think about that. And then the NSF due date this year is the 4th Wednesday of the month, which is July 22nd. They used to be as confusing as possible by having different dates for different directorates, but they stopped that, and that's a good thing. So what if after hearing all of this or after thinking about it, you decide you're not ready to reply? Here are some things you could do. Probably the best one is to volunteer to be a reviewer. It allows you to learn how the system works, what makes a proposal compelling. You're doing it in an environment where there are people who've looked at a lot of these, and you can really get a sense of what criteria they're looking at, what will make them excited about a proposal, or conversely, there are often things that are really detrimental to proposals, and you can learn what those are. So it used to be that you would just email a program officer, give them your bio sketch and some keywords for your expertise and interest. Some of the directorates now have a form that you fill out. So if you know what directorate you're probably applying to, you go to their webpage and see what the process is. And the best thing about it is no previous experience is required. So you don't have to have been a awardee or have reviewed before. They're usually pretty desperate for reviewers, so it's easy to get in the door, I think. Obviously, then building your publication record and generating preliminary data once you have sort of an understanding of what.
Oh my God, when does this end?
Piloting potential education and outreach activities, or at least building those relationships, especially if you're interested in doing work with K-12 teachers or students. Applying for smaller grants, obviously, or other types of NSF grants, not even smaller necessarily. And then taking the opportunity to be a co-principal investigator on the grants of other PIs. Okay. A resource page, so that's the career program page. The PAPPG, once you're starting to develop an NSF proposal, is the Bible for NSF proposals. That stands for the Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide, I think. NSF has a special report of 10 big ideas, so that's worth perusing. It can strengthen your proposal if you are working in an area of one of those big ideas, as long as you sort of integrate that smoothly into the proposal. But it is something to look at, and mentioning it makes NSF happy because it means that you're aware, you have a above average understanding of what their mission is and what they're trying to accomplish. We have an extensive website with templates, checklists, boilerplate, all kinds of stuff and more. SPA, Sponsored Projects Administration, of course, is your resource for all the logistics of grant submission, questions about systems, and other things. And then does this link still work? Yeah, it still works. Yeah, okay. Yeah, and this is actually a complete guide to how to become a reviewer. You can register. I should have clicked on this link before this presentation. You can express interest by completing the volunteer to review process on research.gov, which is a new thing, or you can contact a directorate or program. And so that's a valuable link if you want to volunteer as a reviewer, and I would encourage you to do that. There's really probably no better way to figure out what to put and not to put into a proposal than seeing a bunch of people come to an agreement about whether somebody should have put something in or is missing something from a proposal. And I need to get back to my, so now, there we go. Okay, so here's the registration link to participate. Register by next Wednesday. No particular time, I guess 11:59. Probably we'll look at these at 8 on Thursday morning. And there's also a link to our website, because why not? All right, 3:43, not bad. What questions do people have?
You mentioned about the education plan.
Yeah.
So for faculties that do not have teaching appointment, I have personally research and extension appointment.
Oh, okay.
Do you think the chances are affected in any way?
I've never had this question before. But you're an assistant professor?
Yes.
Okay. So the education, if you have an extension appointment, I would think that you could build an education plan around your extension activities, because extension, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but my impression of extension is that a significant component of it is communication of science, and educating the public about scientific stuff. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
So, I mean,
we also have graduate students that we supervise, but
right.
I don't know if that can be.
Yeah, I mean, and so I cut out the education plan part of this presentation, but one of the things it did is it listed all the potential audiences. So it's really K through gray, as they say. So it can be K-12. It is always going to involve some kind of students. So graduate students certainly count, and people will, NSF expects that if you have graduate students, they will be part of your education plan. But in terms of the extension, citizen science, public education, developing knowledge in people who aren't directly associated with academia, even the sort of, people as parts of their education plan, people have done things like collaborated with production companies to create cartoons and things like that. So the education plan component of this can be pretty creative. And I would think that, as long as there is an educative element to your appointment, you should be able to successfully, I mean, you should be able to apply and present an education plan that fits with NSF's priorities for this program.
Thank you.
And I would need to, if you're in the program, I would want to know more about what the extension component of your job entails, and we could think about ways that you could craft an education plan around that. Good question.
But there is a chance, since it's not, a lot of our faculty, especially in CAES, have this type of appointment split. I wonder if anybody with this type of appointment split did get careers award.
Yeah, I don't know offhand. There are a couple of places to look. You could look, well, obviously you could ask around, but then also you could do a keyword search in the NSF award search page for extension. I would think that it would be, as long as you have a research career and there's an education component, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to successfully apply. I don't know of awards. I mean, we've had awards from people in CAES, but not specifically where the education plan was based around extension that I know of. But I don't see why not.
Hi, Jake. I have a quick question for you, and thank you very much for hosting this informational session. So I've been in talks with John Yellen and with Jeff Mance, both at NSF, and they've cautioned me that there is no budget for the career grants in this presidential budget that was pushed through, even in the Senate and the House minibus appropriation budget. It doesn't include anything for careers. Do you have a sense, or do you have any understanding about how funding for this career grant is going to look for next cycle? Because it's a lot of work if it's not even going to have a chance of being funded.
So this is news to me, but I can't imagine that if the choice is the career, so NSF has discretionary funds that they could use to fund programs that they want to continue, even if they're not funded by the bill or whatever. I can't imagine that this flagship, who knows what we can imagine now, right? But I can't imagine that they would let this flagship program suddenly die. I think that the bulk of the work for this is going to be, in May and June especially, and I think that we'll have a better understanding by then. But I can also do some research. Our professional organization, there are people who are, professional, government liaisons who will have, more up-to-date information and predictions about this. So that is a good. Rachel, can you make a note of that we need to investigate?
Yeah, I did. And I did see something, it may have been last year though, it may have been a while, that some original draft had no line for career, but someone clarified that that doesn't mean it's all of the money. Like some of it is maybe set in like other programs somehow. So it
Yeah,
might
like
not be all of it, but
right. So for archaeology, anthropology, for instance, the ones that run through John Yellen, he can allocate the regular budget to careers if he'd like. And so that's how it goes sometimes, but there is no budget line for career itself anymore. And I understand that there's discretionary funds, and that's yay, but I didn't know if there were any rumblings and murmurings, because I don't want to be all doom and gloom. I just want to be realistic here and don't want to invest all of this time.
Yeah.
No shot. And they couldn't definitively say, in our correspondences, like, don't do it. But so I wanted to just get.
Okay, well, that's something that we will find out.
Hey, Jake, I did notice on the NSF FAQs, they do explicitly say they do plan to run a competition in 2026. I don't know, again, the size or which divisions or whatever they're called now. But at least there's that tidbit. The other thing, just with respect to the time and energy, I do really feel like these things are transferable, and you're right. You're generally writing proposals all the time anyway to support your research. One example is we just finished the presidential seed grant competition. We had 161 proposals and funded less than 7% of them. So it's like, and that's a pretty good rate for NSF too, is, 5 to 7%. Uh, I think it's always worth the effort and grantsmanship to work through that process and have all those materials ready for that next competition that opens up, whether it's career or a straight up regular competition. And so
Thank you
let's
for
be
that.
optimistic.
Yeah.
And I also, thanks, Nate. And I also mentioned that other agencies have similar, programs for early career scholars. So, that could, if they shut this down completely, you could adapt that proposal to one of those, some of which are foundations or private, or not private funders, but nonprofit funders. So those exist out there. So there are one of the we always say, plan for salvage. So when your proposal doesn't get funded, even if it's your third attempt, there are things that you can take from that proposal and apply to other opportunities. But yeah, it is ultimately would be disheartening to get to July and have the program be canceled. But I think that's it's an extreme circumstance. Scientists would be up in arms.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. What other questions?
As if we're not up in arms already about everything else. Yeah.
Thanks, Jake, for this. This was really helpful information. I am wondering if you run this program every year.
Well, this is the first year that it's been like this. So what we used to do was we would have, we had a peer review program where you would be grouped with peers and everyone would read two other proposals. So you'd have feedback from two peers, and we had some guidance for how to do that. But again, it would really depend on the time commitment and, frankly, the seriousness that people took. So there were people who had really good experiences, and there are people who were in a group that was kind of a dud.
Okay.
There was still sort of a way for us to get more eyes get more feedback, and that was really useful. And then we always do work. Our staff in our office always works on every proposal that comes through the program. So this is the first time we've done a multi-session where we try to cover all of the aspects in detail, and provide expert review from previous winners. And so there are enough sort of layers of review that I really think that if you go through the whole thing, you will have a competitive proposal. And there are always a few people who, find that it's too much to handle. We're trying to sort of alleviate that this year by spreading it out over a longer time frame. And if people have to drop out of the program, that's fine. But we expect people to come in with the fully intending to submit a proposal in July, because our goal, the goal of our office is obviously to get more proposals funded, and career is a prestigious award, and it is something that other universities kind of use as a benchmark. And we think that we could be doing a lot better as an institution in terms of those. So we're really trying to provide, significant support to career proposals. And we do plan to run this every year. And probably it'll improve year by year. It's the nature of programs. We are developing an assessment an assessment tool to see how impactful and how popular it is by the end. So we plan to make year-over-year improvements, but to keep it going in future years.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You see the question in the chat?
I'm scrolling through the questions.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Are we at a disadvantage if we're in a field that tends to have fewer publications and slower citation rates? Then no, you're not at a disadvantage, because your proposal, you shouldn't be at a disadvantage.
That's the same reaction I had. There's been some shifting up there.
If you want to answer this question, because that reviewers should be taking that into account, and you should have reviewers who are mostly in that field. And if they're not, then the reviewers who are in your field should explain to them that this is the culture of the field, and this is what is expected in terms of production. So the answer is you shouldn't be. There are ways to mitigate that too. I mean, that's something you can address, for example, when you're discussing your sort of career path as a PI. there are probably ways to address it. But yeah, you kind of have to rely on the expertise and the fairness of the panel, which is true in a lot of other different respects as well. So
Yeah, NSF has you know, as an institution reorganized and changed sort of their minimum guidelines for how panels and reviews are conducted. But despite what I think is an erosion of the minimum standard, I still think that we have several fairly responsible program directors who are going to try their best to keep those programs rigorous and you know, get good people to review in their respective areas. So hopefully that'll be maintained more than it necessarily looks like at the NSF wide level right now.
thanks, Nate. That's helpful. More questions? You can feel free to email me or Rachel or both about questions that come up. We're happy to. I'm happy to have a brief conversation about, you know, giving advice about when and whether to go forward, and also general questions about the program are welcome. So, all right, I think that is it. I hope that this was convincing and people want to participate who are planning on submitting, and register by Wednesday. The link is in this presentation, which we will share. And Rachel can also send it out just in the email, so it's easy to access. And we have a fancy flyer that we'll send you as well. In fact, that's maybe the main thing we need to send. It's fine to send out the presentation too. Anyway, thank you for your time, and yeah, we hope to see you in the program. And have a great weekend. Stop share.
Thanks, Jake.
All right, thanks, Nate.